There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's positive or negative.
The Yankees have swept the Twins.
Minnesota Sports Chat has you covered. Talking nothing but Minnesota sports all year long. It's time now for the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in his own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat with your host, Ross Brendel.
Well, that would be me with edition number, I believe, unofficially 225 of the soon-to-be award-winning Minnesota Sports Chat. Yes, award-winning, if only in my own mind, presented by my friends at Beans Coffee Company. The Minnesota Golden Gophers, they're just hours away from taking on the University of North Carolina on Thursday night at the artist formerly known as TCF Bank Stadium. Kickoff at 7 p.m. Daniel House from Gophers Guru to preview the game and Gophers football season in just mere moments. First, though, got to let you know, Minnesota Sports Chat proudly supported by my friends at Beans Coffee Company. People often ask me, how can I support the pod? Rate and review kindly, of course. Comment on YouTube, like and subscribe, but also support my friends at Beans Coffee Company. And if you use the promo code SportsChat at coffeebybeans.com, you're going to save a little bit of cash at checkout. Again, promo code SportsChat at coffeebybeans.com. Simply put, the best coffee you will ever put in your mouth with flavors and varieties for anybody's palate. It's your one-stop shop and made by Minnesota sports fans. They're cheering for the same teams we are. Coffeebybeans.com. Promo code SportsChat. It is none other than Mr. Daniel House season, which Daniel, of course, means, I totally forgot about this, I think this is the right one. In 3, 2, 1. Yeah, there we go. Snare drum season. I believe that's what the kids call a snare drum. That means it's Golden Gopher football season. Daniel House from GophersGuru.com. I think I saw him on the Gopher Gridiron, Pair and Spare. What were you just doing recently?
Yeah, I was on Gopher Gridiron doing the All Big Ten draft, the annual tradition, and picked our players. So that was a fun one.
Do you like your draft?
Oh, I loved it. I was very happy with how it shook out. Now we'll see who can stay healthy. That's what it always comes down to in those All Big Ten drafts.
Shout out to the crew at Gopher Gridiron. They do a really good job. Another podcast that I listen to get pumped for game day this time of year, or I guess this year as it has been for, I don't know, Daniel, maybe about a decade now. Gophers opening up on a Thursday night. They'll take on the Tar Heels at Huntington Bank Stadium. North Carolina, Daniel, comes in as a 1.5 to 3 point favorite, depending on your odds maker of choice. You know I love this one, the ESPN matchup predictor, for whatever that's worth, Daniel. Says 54.5% of the time North Carolina will win this game. Both universities led by new quarterbacks, Minnesota's Max Brosmer by way of New Hampshire. UNC will be led by son of former Minnesota Vikings quarterback Brad Johnson, Max Johnson by way of LSU and Texas A&M. We'll get to North Carolina in just a moment, but your general overall thoughts on the season to come for the University of Minnesota Golden Gopher football squad.
Well, right from the jump, get a chance to see Max Brosmer in a big test. North Carolina's defensive scheme is very multiple, lots of pressure coming from different spots, very good front seven, strong defensive line, particularly lots of versatility up there. So I think it's going to be a really good test for Brosmer right away. Minnesota's receivers, I want to see who can merge behind Daniel Jackson. Can you get production from Lemeke Brockington, Elijah Spencer, Christian Driver to get some suddenness out of the slot? And then defensively looking at the safety spot and figuring out how that will shake out. I think you're going to see a mix of Coleman Bryson and Aiden Gooseby, Darius Green, Kerry Brown, based on situations, and then figuring out as the season goes on what mix is best and maybe going a little more sub-packagey with the secondary based on the type of personnel they have. That's something that I'll be watching pretty closely.
Yeah, Minnesota, Housey, has been really blessed at safety or even free safety just on the back end when you're talking about Antoine Winfield and Newbin. And you mentioned Coleman Bryson. I think, did he officially win MVP of the Pinstripe Bowl or maybe defensive MVP? He played well that game. You didn't notice him maybe as much last year. But is that a player that Gophers fans should be excited about?
Yeah, and he'll be elevating into a larger role this season and figuring out, what packages are best for him, versus Aiden Gooseby in coverage type of skill set. You look at how they're going to mix that up. I think Coleman and Kerry Brown are going to handle more of the free safety side of it, and then the strong safety side, you'll have Aiden Gooseby in passing downs, and then Darius Green as well competing. And Darius, missed some time during camp, ended up coming back later. So I'm just fascinated to kind of see how that all plays out in the back. And like I say, it'll be more situational based on, like, if it's a passing downs package, you have this specific group out there. If it's an early down run package, this is the type of group that you'll have there. I mean, you can even kick Jayante McMillan, the TCU transfer, back to safety, occasionally move him down into the passing downs nickel. That's another spot. I guess I'm just fascinated to kind of see how that plays out. Who's the passing downs nickels? Is Jayante McMillan? Probably. But is there anybody else who can emerge in that spot? Are they maybe looking at kicking a corner inside to play that nickel passing down role? We'll see.
First games, Daniel, are always kind of fun because you truly don't know what you're going to see. And the team you see week one, whether you win or lose, generally not the team you're going to see in week 10, 11, or 12. Teams evolve. Some get better. Some get worse. Heck, we won't even know if the Gophers win or lose. It'll be tough to classify that game as a tough loss or a really good win, I think, for a handful of weeks. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to, not just in the North Carolina game, Daniel, but just how it evolves throughout the early part of the season. The Gophers don't just have a new quarterback like lots of teams around the country, thanks to the transfer portal and NIL and a lot of new bodies, but they also have a new defensive coordinator. I'm interested to see, and you might have a little bit more intel, having seen some of the practices, what a Corey Heatherman defense is going to look like as compared to a Joe Rossi defense. And we'll get our first look at that in roughly, a matter of hours, 48-ish hours from when this pod drops.
Yeah, I actually wrote quite a bit about this in the defensive preview for the game. I don't think you'll see wholesale major changes from a schematic standpoint. You're still going to see the split field safety, split field coverage type of defense with single high elements dashed in. Might be a little more sub-packagey, so you might have some dime stuff out there potentially, getting more defensive backs on the field. Also, like overload fronts in the passing game. I wrote about those on the website as well, potentially maximizing the versatility. So implementing more front type stuff when you get teams into passing downs. It's something to watch for. I know there's like a lot of people talking about Heatherman being very aggressive as a defensive coordinator in the past. And that's been the case, but it isn't going to be something where they're going to be just bringing the heat all the time. I think it's going to be more timely pressure, logo range on the field, low red zone, high leverage spots, timing it up in the correct fashion is important. So, limiting the explosive play, stopping the run, tackling well, those are the three things that are going to be the hallmark of this defense, and they have been for a long time. So I would not expect major wholesale schematic changes, maybe just more from a package standpoint. There might be more multiplicity to the defense.
On the offensive side, with a new quarterback, I think one of the things that fans are hoping for is that Max Brosmer will allow the team to open up the offense a little bit. I do believe that was the reason why he was brought in. Obviously, the coaching staff wasn't perhaps in love with what they saw last year. Hence, I believe they basically told the Greek Freak that we're going to bring in some competition. That may have been a part of why he transferred. I don't know if that's ever been confirmed or not, but I think most fans, Daniel, are just kind of hoping to see more in the passing game, and that's going to have to start with the FCS transfer, formerly 1AA. He'll get the first crack at it. Will the system allow him to do that, though? Because at the end of the day, they say a tiger doesn't change their stripes, Daniel House, and a PJ Fleck offense wants to be run-oriented first. So is this going to be a case of truly maybe trying to pass the ball more or just being more efficient when you do pass? Or
Well,
is it a mixture of both?
well, looking at it from a few different angles, it's what, like I always say, it's about being multidimensional offensively. So, you got to get to the point where if teams are stacking the box and putting an extra defender in there, you got to be able to win on the outside and get those matchups in the passing game. And I believe this season you might see a little more passing to the running backs, ability to go through the progression and find the back, which is something that Brosmer's good at, dating back to New Hampshire film, able to go through the entire progression, get the ball to the back, pick up 5 yards, get yourself in 2nd and 5, a little bit better play calling scenario, limit your predictability. But I believe it's going to come down to the wide receiver room. Like I say, can you get a progression from somebody not named Daniel Jackson and Elijah Spencer, Lebecky Brockton, Christian Driver? Like, they're going to need multiple productive players. You look at when they were successful in 2019 and multidimensional offensively, they had a lot of different weapons they could go to. And with the wide receiver room, they're going to have to get some development there. And Darius Taylor, you're going to need him to stay healthy, an elite tackle breaker. That's the key trait in those backs, and he has that when he's on the field. He can catch the ball. Marcus Major as a 2, who I think really emerged in camp and show what he can do when he's on the field. Health's a big factor there as well. So Minnesota put a lot of resources into that running back room. But I think it's going to be, Max definitely has the talent to do a lot of different things and fits the type of offense that they really would like to run. Some of the things they wanted to maybe do last year, they couldn't quite do. Will they stick with it this year based on the fact they have an experienced quarterback? I think that's going to be the storyline going into the season. Just the growth of that wide receiver. Do they have enough talent in that area?
This one is pretty simple for me, but Darius Taylor, Daniel Jackson, are those the 2 guys when you come to a Gopher football game that those are the guys that are going to wow you? Who else might be on that list that you're kind of really looking forward to seeing if it's not those 2 guys?
Jaw Joyner. I believe something really clicked with Jaw this offseason. Just his ability to open up the pass rush arsenal that he has available, adding more moves. We already saw the athletic traits and what he can do in that area. You look at how much attention he draws on a play-to-play basis, how much he gets held play-to-play. Ja has an immense amount of talent, and I just see a shift in his confidence level rising. I'm expecting a big campaign from Ja this year, especially if they're able to kind of get him some matchups in passing down situations. But you got to be able to stop the run, and if they're able to stop the run and get in some of those situations, that will be beneficial. So I'd say Ja is the big name there, and then Ariante, obviously. I mean, Ariante is on the radar of the scouts. Potentially can really work himself into being a high draft pick if he shows out well this season. And, you look at what he does in the run game. I don't think he's appreciated enough for what he does in that area. Now, pass set stuff, if he could take a huge step forward there, show consistency, he can be picked very high in next year's draft. So Ja and Ariante, those would be the 2 I would pinpoint.
Can I tell you what worries me about this season, Daniel?
Yes.
And I'll preface it this way. I don't think the ceiling for this team is super high, and I don't even mean that being negative. I think this could be a transition year when you look at what you're hoping to get out of a transfer quarterback, when you look at the schedule, and I'm not trying to make excuses. PJ's been here roughly a decade now, but I just don't think the schedule and what they're facing sets up for this team, if all goes well, to even win more than 7 games or even 6 games. This could be a team, I think, that struggles to make it to a bowl game this year, but maybe not. I'm hopeful this is a 6-7 win team. Hopefully they win a game along the way you don't expect them to, because that's always fun when that happens. But what does scare me about this season, Daniel, is if Max Brosmer isn't very good and they have to make a change at some point in the season, I'm worried about either playing somebody too early or playing somebody who isn't better than Brosmer. And I think that will put you in a really tough spot, but that'll also take, Daniel, I think, a handful of games to figure out and even see where we're at. If it's not Brosmer, do they rip the red shirt off and go to Lindsey right away, or is that something they want to wait and see on? I guess I don't want to be in that conundrum, but I feel like that conundrum is also very possible.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about Brosmer's ability to translate. I'd be more worried about the injury side of it. If something were to happen and then, you're put in that spot where you got to make a decision. And obviously, I think you start Drake and get him the experience right away because he's showing the ability to adjust pretty quickly in some areas. Like, obviously, he's still got to play games and get used to the speed. And, there was a practice session we were at. He was taking the lumps a little bit, but then you saw the flashes. Like the spring, he didn't look too big for him. Like they're very excited about what he can do. So in the event something happens, which is like, you can't control that, they'll probably turn to him. But I feel very confident about his ability to translate. I mean, obviously there's always that risk of like speed elevation going from the FCS to the Big Ten and playing power four football. The shape, the windows that you got to throw in, you got to shape the ball differently. You got to get the ball out just a little bit quicker. The athletes are just that touch faster. It might take some time at the beginning to kind of get that down. So I wouldn't press the panic button if right away, it doesn't go 100% smooth. But like this guy's intelligence, his field vision, his experience, like all those things, the work that he's put in this offseason, I feel pretty confident in his ability to translate.
Before we do a little North Carolina, Minnesota preview in itself, I'm going to set a number. I'm not going to make you pick a number because you'll be in the locker room an awful lot throughout the year and covering the team. I wouldn't make you do that. But I'm going to say the number is 6 wins this year for the Gopher football team and a legit bowl bid to wherever they would go at 6-6. Would you go higher than 6 wins or less than 6 wins? Or would you say 6 is about perfect?
That's where you want to set your expectation level entering the season based on the schedule, based on, the type of opponents you're going to play, how it all breaks down. Like I always say, I break it up into thirds. So you play 4 games, you play another 4 games, you look at the next 4 games. You got to reassess after 4 because you know what your team looks like. You know what the opponents, their tendencies are like, what their personnel availability is, who's the most injured. So I'd say that first 4 games, that's going to be the key stretch of the season. Can Minnesota put themselves in a position where they're entering that second third in a really good spot, or are they going to have, a couple of slip ups in there? And then, obviously that's going to change the pattern going into the season. You got that stretch in the middle there where you got Iowa. Between the first third and the second third, you got Iowa, Michigan, USC, on the road at UCLA. Then you regroup in the bye week and finish out that second third with Maryland. But I think you got to really start strong in that first third. Those UNC and Iowa games are going to be critical and kind of set the tone for the rest of the season based on the ebbs and flows that of the schedule.
Yeah, you got to win one of those 2, and then you can't have any form of letdown or setback at home against Rhode Island or Nevada. That's just my take on it. Daniel, if you want my hunch is the Gophers will be 3-1 after 4 games, but finish 6-6. So take that for whatever you want with the schedule that they play. I just think it's going to be a tough season, but obviously I hope to be wrong, and it would be fun to see the boys pick up maybe a few wins you're not quite expecting. Let's spend a few minutes on North Carolina. It's always tough this time of year because you just really don't know what you're going to see. Both teams bring back their head coaches, a good chunk of personnel and coordinators, but you really don't know what type of wrinkles teams might show you in week 1. But what are you expecting from North Carolina on Thursday night? And what is North Carolina going to try and do to put the Gophers in a tough spot, either offensively or defensively?
Intriguing matchup based on the fact I believe there could be 2 quarterbacks playing in this game. You get Max Johnson a little bit. Maybe they throw in some wrinkles for Connor Harrell as a runner. So Minnesota has to prepare for both of those elements. You got Chip Lindsey, who's got some air raid pass concept, some Malzahn inspired run game stuff. So you get a mix of gap and zone schemes. Amari and Hampton, running back, one of the best running backs in the whole country. Caleb Hood coming back. You got Darwin Barlow, a transfer from USC. So they did a good job in that running back room. They got some talent there, versatility in the pass game. They've been navigating some injuries in that room. But the name I want you to keep an eye on, a lot of people talk about the bigger names, but true freshman Jordan Shipp, 4-star, could be maybe the surprise player that kind of breaks out for them. So keep that name in the back of your mind. I'm watching the offensive line now. Only one starter back, Willie Lampton, the right guard, brought in transfers, less experienced players. I had a little unique situation. The offensive line coach, Randy Clements, had an infection, and he was in the hospital at the start of training camp. The first day training camp kicked off and missed like a whole week of training camp as they're kind of undergoing some of these changes and they shifted people's responsibilities around. But that offensive line room had a lot of moving pieces. You got that going on. So watch that on that side of the ball. Then defensively, the heartbeat of this team is the defensive line. I love what they did with their defensive line. Josh Harris, a transfer from Ole Miss, is someone that they're very excited about. You look at Kevin Hester, Jabari Ritzie, Travis Shaw, mix of different skill sets in that defensive tackle room. Those four guys, they can do a lot of different things in terms of packages, but that defensive line headlined by Kamon Rucker, I mean, this guy last year, one of the top pass rushers in the country. You look at the type of matchups that he can get based on the personnel they have in their defensive line. I think he's going to be the big player to watch in this game on the defensive side of the ball. And then watch Bo Atkinson, a younger player who I think could ascend as a pass rusher and maybe make a big impact in this game. A safety room for them, I think, is the one that I'm watching the most. You can read a little bit about that. I think that there could be some opportunity to exploit some things there. Cornerback room, they got Marcus Allen and Elijah Hussey. Elijah Hussey was playing nickel last year. He's moving back outside, which I think is a good spot for him. So two really good corners on the outside that I think will kind of be the hallmark of it. And as I mentioned earlier, the unknown nature of this scheme is going to be something that Minnesota has to be ready for. You got blitz pressure coming from every different spot. He loves to mix it around the defense. You're going to get some man coverage. You're going to have to be able to get open against. And Collins, you got to remember, Jeff Collins, the defensive coordinator, is the head coach at Georgia Tech, took a year off last off season to kind of, get a look at other teams, study stuff. You really don't even know what type of wrinkles that North Carolina is going to implement. So that's a big challenge for, Max Brosmer, the offensive staff, making all the adjustments, and then the helmet communication side of it. You got that for the first time now, being able to maybe use that to your advantage. I think the teams that do that well, they're going to put themselves in a really good spot this season. So overarching, then those are some of the things to watch, and you can kind of read more in the preview on the website.
That website, gophersguru.com, gophersguru.com.
House maintenance.
Oh, that was the wrong one. Dang it. This is the one I wanted to give you.
Don't worry, Daniel. I'm keeping the under.
Final thought for you, and I hate to be this simplistic, but it really does feel like the team that just turns the ball over less or doesn't turn the ball over, especially in week one, Daniel, will have the best chance to win this game and probably will win it. And because of new quarterbacks playing for both squads, it's really tough to definitively say who has the advantage there. I think maybe you would lean North Carolina because Max Johnson has played high-level football at LSU and Texas A&M, but he hasn't always played high-level football at a really high level himself, so who really knows? But I feel like it will be a close game. I'm not sure either team will blow each other out. I hope the Gophers being at home, that will help them. Don't know what the crowd will look like. The weather right now certainly doesn't look very conducive to maybe a big walk-up crowd and maybe a crowd that's super into the game, so we'll have to see about that. But it just kind of feels like the team, and this is so dumb and cliche to say, but Daniel, just feels like the team that shoots themselves in the foot less is going to walk away with win number one of the season.
Yeah, I'd say playing the run is the big factor. Minnesota has to play the run well. They're going to need to, shut down Amari and Hampton and then get themselves in situations where they can maximize their versatility up front and exploit maybe some communication lapses with a new look offensive line, being able to do a lot of different things up front, move people around, get some mismatches. that's kind of the key there. And then I'd say offensively, it's going to come down to, like you say, taking care of the ball, being able to get something going in the pass game, be tight and pass protection, communicate well, because with all the different pre and post snap disguises, all the different things that are on the plate of the quarterback in this game, you can kind of prepare for it, but until you're in there, you see exactly what type of schemes they're going to implement. There's going to be a lot of adjustments made here. Corey Heatherman, Greg Harbaugh are going to be tested right from the jump. Ability to just kind of put together the best schemes based on what you're getting in the game and make adjustments. So, I think that it's always going to come down to explosive plays, tackling, taking care of the ball, who's better up front on both sides of the ball.
All right, Daniel, 30 seconds or less. Weigh in. Who wins and why?
I think North Carolina wins in a close game. That's my prediction right now. I don't know. I need to see how Minnesota handles the North Carolina's run game.
I think you and I are very much in lockstep. I would not be surprised if the Gophers win. I hope they win. Looking forward to getting back to the bank. It just feels like a very tall test in week one, but I'm hopeful that the boys then after that would bounce back and win the next two. But we'll see. One game at a time, right, Daniel? That's what they say.
One game at a time. Big test in the first game, It's going to be fun to watch.
What else is at gophersguru.com that people need to be aware of?
Lots of features. You can read about all the players out on the field, get a perspective of how they're going to contribute this season. And then part 1, part 2 of the preview, offense and defense, inside everybody that you need to know, basically in every level of the team entering the matchup versus North Carolina. So I'll encourage you to go over, check it out. $5 a month gets you access to all the content.
Gophersguru.com. He is at Daniel House MN on the X machine. I am at the Ross Brendel on that same X machine. If you're watching on YouTube, please comment below, like, subscribe, tell your friends, and no matter how you're watching or listening, do me a favor, hit pause, share this link with a family member or friend so they too can know the glory of Minnesota Sports Chat. I'm Ross Brendel saying thank you so much for listening. I'll be back again real soon with more Minnesota sports content and Minnesota Sports Chat presented by my friends at Beans Coffee Company.
Thanks for listening to Minnesota Sports Chat, presented by Beans Coffee Company. Use the promo code SPORTSCHAT. That's one word, Sports Chat, to save at checkout. Follow Ross on X at the Ross Brendel. Like and subscribe to Minnesota Sports Chat wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review kindly.